We are living in unprecedented times. Not only have we entered the age of Aquarius, but we've entered the age of AI. Humanity is about to undergo the most dramatic transformation ever, and I believe that makes it the perfect time for us to address the global mental health crisis. I believe it is through raising human consciousness that we gift people with the tools they need for emotional and mental mastery. Hi, I'm spiritual teacher and speaker, Shaman Isis, and I'm on a one-woman mission to raise human consciousness by teaching spiritual practices and sharing incredible people's heroes' journeys. Join me on Glow Up with Shaman Isis for inspiration for your hero's journey. If you're ready for transformation, check out Glow Up with Shaman Isis, the collection of books and courses. We are living in unprecedented times. Not only have we entered the age of Aquarius, but we've entered the age of AI. Humanity is about to undergo the most dramatic transformation ever, and I believe that makes it the perfect time for us to address the global mental health crisis. I believe it is through raising human consciousness that we gift people with the tools they need for emotional and mental mastery. Hi, I'm spiritual teacher and speaker, Shaman Isis, and I'm on a one-woman mission to raise human consciousness by teaching spiritual practices and sharing incredible people's heroes' journeys. Join me on Glow Up with Shaman Isis for inspiration for your hero's journey. Hi, and welcome to Glow Up with Shaman Isis. I'm your host, Shaman Isis, of course. And I say this every time I do an episode because I always have wonderful guests, but I'm actually like super honored and very excited for the guest that I have on the show today. He is a longtime friend, an absurdly talented stylist, fashion designer, conscious living expert. Welcome to the show, Carlton Jones.
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm
Yeah.
honored as well.
It's so good to see you. I'm so excited to catch up with everything you're working on. For those of you who aren't already familiar with Carlton Jones as a fashion designer and celebrity stylist and conscious living expert, I'm going to be dragging it all out of Carlton today. We're going to be catching up on his collection, on his work with some of the most iconic people in the world, and talking about the things he has coming up. So, Carlton,
Yes.
please share with our listeners just a quick, like a brief. I'll dig into it, but a little brief about your journey to fashion designer.
Okay, sure. And what a journey it's been. It started in retail of all places. I moved to New York in 1990 from Wilmington, North Carolina, working retail, where I was transferred from my job there and managed some stores in New York City. And sort of made a lateral move from management to sales at Barney's New York, where I was very rudely fired at my 90-day probation. That flipped my whole world around. Like, here was this company I had been with for years, worked through college, moved to New York, and then I left them to work for Barney's. And then at my 90-day probation, I was fired, very unjustly, I might say. But I won't get into that. But you know what? I was devastated, but in fact, it was a door closing and a window opening, because that's when a friend suggested I try styling. And so I scrambled around getting a portfolio together for many years, and got one of my first gig was a celebrity gig, actually styling Lou Rawls for like an album cover. So I started being connected into the industry well enough to get some good gigs from the beginning. And I guess the pivotal point to taking me from a regular stylist to celebrity stylist was working with Queen Latifah, actually, for her Black Rain CD packaging. And that was the first time she had been seen outside of like the hard wrapper role. And I was the first stylist to put her in a dress. And Todd Oldham and fashion and things like that, people had never seen her in. So it got a lot of attention, and I kind of blew up styling wise through. This is also during the rise of hip hop. It was a magical time for music and for styling and creative expression, and I just rode with it. I rode with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what got me into styling. And And I did that for many, many years, for about 2 decades. Actually, that's not, I did that for about 10 years before I led the first team of stylists in Kingston, Jamaica to stage the very first Caribbean Fashion Week. So that was pretty monumental in many ways. I returned for the subsequent 5 years to help stage the show. I met all the top designers in the Caribbean. I acquired a large clientele of very wealthy women who had me shopping in New York and bringing clothes to the Caribbean and that, Trinidad and Jamaica and places like that. And after a while, I began to get a real sensibility of what they were looking for, what that lifestyle called for. I grew up on the beach, so I could relate to it in certain ways as having that sort of beach like aesthetics around you. But you got life to lead and things to do, and professional women who like to travel, which I do as well. So one day I was selling this woman this, I can never forget this moment, this $1,800 Michael Kors caftan. And I thought to myself, as she wanted it without blinking, like, this is really a square with a cool print and beautiful fabric. Like, I know squares, I know prints, maybe. Yeah. That's really what planted the seed to start designing.
Yeah, I think your journeys so for those of you who aren't aware, I've known Carlton for a really long time. We'll just say a really long time and leave it there. I
That's
got the,
good.
I met Carlton when he was styling at some of the most famous names in the world, and so I've watched this real explosion of him from moving from styling and continuing to keep your hand in because you're so in demand with it, and then bringing your own collection to the forefront. So before we get into the collection, I do want to go back and ask you about some of those key moments because you really have had these iconic styling moments. What are some of your favorite moments?
Wow. It's funny. I started collecting these thoughts of, I've been asked this recently, and there's so many, but I realized one thing I've done that's very interesting is I've styled the Queen of Soul, Aretha Franklin. Definitely an iconic moment for me.
Wow.
And honestly, one of the best images that I've ever seen of her came from that photo shoot, and I'm not biased. um, I've worked with multiple times the queen of hip hop soul, Mary J. Blige, and at very pivotal points in her career. I've worked with the queen of neo soul, Erykah Badu, who has flipped my world upside down and outside of the box and everywhere you could imagine. And actually, this, created quite a friendship over the years of working with her. And I've worked with former First Lady and always First Lady Queen Michelle Obama. So
Love it.
I feel like those are like probably those queens kind of like rise above in stature and just, beautiful women that really have been monumental in my career and very and all coming at very incredible times. And there's been lots of others. Um, that have come along the way, but those women have really been monumental in my desire to dress different body types and address different personalities and just realize that I'm working with royalty like that. But honestly, Cynthia, one of the most memorable moments in my styling career was working with a single mom who was on a budget and recently divorced and entering the workforce and interviewing for the first time and needed some clothes that would do that and also take her on a date because she
Oh,
hadn't been dating in like 10 years. And just showing that woman like, oh no, you can wear a dress that will do all of that, because she was always in pants. And she was like, discovered like, oh my God, this dress is the best thing that I've had in my life and however long a time. That was equally as fulfilling as any of those incredible stars that I've worked with through the years. So
yeah.
it's been a balance of helping real people discover themselves and what that does to them, and then of course working with these super dynamic, super talented people, and sometimes even introducing them to each other. So there you go.
You were one of the forerunner stylists who well you were I think one of the things that helped you to stand out so much and your work to stand out so much is that you were drawing the inner woman to the surface
Mm.
and appreciating and showcasing her form, and regardless of size. It wasn't about, only dressing, size twos. You really were, you began. I'm not saying this as well as I want to, but I remember some of the most powerful work that you did was dressing all different shapes and showing how extraordinary the style could be, no matter what your size was. And you were one of the first fashion designers that really contemplated shape and size in your design. Was that purposeful or did it just come natural?
Um, I think it was a combination of things. Like for me, I always approached styling with, it's different. You work with models, they're clothes hangers, they're blank sheets, they wear whatever you put on them, and they usually look good, and that's great. And I think working with musicians and personalities really created a desire to illuminate what was already there, help to bring that out. Always I wanted to push it a little further than they may have expected it to do or go. But ultimately it's about helping people create something that they feel good about. Like that's always going to carry over better than being stuffed and pulled and tied in some outfit that someone told you need to wear.
Hmm.
So for me, it was always about getting their confidence, getting their trust, actually, that I was informing them well as to what would accentuate whatever their form and body might be, but also giving them the tools to understand that whatever they're wearing is something that they felt empowered in, and that brings me more joy. Hence the single mom. It was like kind of the same thing, but that's what really kind of, those were the highlights for me. And that was regardless of the shape and the size, it's like feel good at your size. If you're size 22, but you just came down from a 24, then you're going to feel just as good as a size 2 that, oh my god, I'm now a 4, whatever. This, it's like feel good wherever you are and have fun with that. And I've always enjoyed witnessing how people feel in the clothes, which I think has translated to what I do as a designer as well.
Yeah, yeah, I'm glad you touched on it at the end, because your shift from styling the majority of your time to designing was really powerful to watch. You brought a new aesthetic, a new look to the industry at a time when it really needed fresh. I didn't necessarily, it needed wearable and enjoyable and flexible. Uh,
Mm.
so the Carlton Jones collection, can you share a little bit about that shift for you, and of course the fact that you won a very important award along the way?
Oh wow. uh, yes, gladly, gladly. Um, that shift. So from the beginning, I approached this sort of resort inspired aesthetic because I was working these warm climates. I grew up on the beach. I wanted clothes that would work in that environment, but also transcend from that environment, not be limited to, like, it wasn't just about a cover up or a sarong. It was about clothes that you could wear in that environment at a chic pool party, but you could also, I wanted my girlfriend in Brooklyn to be interested in it too, and not just some, ethereal beach setting um, that I don't live in on a day to day. So I approached it with an aesthetic that attempted to encapsulate both communities, I suppose. That's one way to say it. But ultimately, I think the most important aesthetic I tried to carry through, and I still do, is again how you feel in the clothing. And that was really inspired by the first silhouette that I decided to bring into this resort collection. I thought, okay, what can I do different? What can I do that isn't already being done? Like, your point of entrance. And I realized at the time, and this was almost 10 years ago, that capes have always been a silhouette that I adored. I've always adored capes and women in capes. And I thought at the time they were really a winter item. They were beginning to maybe be seen here and there on the red carpet, but it was still very early 10 years ago. And I thought, how chic would that be as a cover up? Poolside, under your, with your bathing suit under a cape that give you full coverage. I had never seen it before, and I was very, very moved by this idea. And then after my first two collections, really playing with capes and ponchos and caftans and these very easy shapes that also, yes, in my mind, I thought these are very size inclusive as well, which was also a very kind of early move into being more inclusive of, you go to major department stores, they didn't go past size 12 or 14. So it was something I recognized was a lack and void in the market, and very consciously so with some of the shapes that I was bringing. But also I realized my limitations as a designer, to be honest. Like I wasn't a trained pattern maker or designer. So for me, the first patterns needed to be easy things that I could, like easy shapes that weren't too technical. And also they would happen to be very forgiving and easy for, very curvy and shapely women, which is also extremely prominent in the Caribbean. So it's kind of all those things melting together. But after a couple collections, one of my advisors, Roger Joseph, was like, okay, you've done the cape. It's fabulous. We love it. But what else? What else you got? And so I began to get into my head and thinking, what else am I bringing? And I realized when I moved away from the cape that it wasn't just the cape itself. It was the fact that you can feel like a piece of crap. You put on a cape and you feel like a royal superhero.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
it was the fact that the cape made you feel something that was just as important as the silhouette itself. And that's when I began to lean into what's now become my tagline, that resort isn't a destination, it's a feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted people to feel like they're on vacation, whether they're, in Brooklyn, in the Bahamas, in the Hamptons, wherever you on your sofa. And on your sofa, I'll go ahead and I'll take us there. On your sofa is where we found ourselves during the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And then that whole aesthetic of it being a feeling and not a destination made even more sense than ever before. Because although I flipped it a little bit to, it was less about going out and being showy, it was more about lounging at home than anywhere else. It was the same aesthetic, and it became more important than ever that you could feel like you could check out even though you weren't going anywhere.
If you're ready for transformation, check out Glow Up with Shaman Isis, the collection of books and courses.
Wow. And I got to witness that evolution. I love the cape. I must have been channeling you because I did a cape in the Intention collection.
You work a cape, girl. You can work
Yeah.
a cape, that's for sure.
And I love it when I was on the train recently and some little kid turned to his dad and said, is she a superhero? And I was like, oh, yes, I am. So a few years ago, you won a really important award. Can you share
Yes.
that with our listeners?
That was actually in the pandemic. The September of 2020, Vogue and the Harlem Fashion Row awarded me with a grant as a part of their initiative through Raise, an incredible fashion collective that's embracing and really pushing diversity in this fashion community. It was a really pivotal moment in my branding and my career completely. The process, the application process alone made me look at my business with a lens that I had never really looked so, closely with. It was a very, very grueling process. And that was an award in itself, honestly, because it really made me look at my business closely. But I was in competition with some really great brands. And so it really, along with the 10K, it came with a mentorship and some confidence that I have something here and that I need to really tap into it and really try and take it to the next level. I mentioned in Vogue is great, but it was really an awareness of what I had at a time that I became more conscious, like everyone became more conscious of their environment during that time and what was happening in the world and around the world and how close we're connected. and what our impact is on the world. And so for me, that was also where I began to explore and discover more sustainable design. And that was really, at first, it was like, I need a knit that can make this lounge at home, these clothing that I want to lounge at home in, that are now what fashion is calling for and what I want to do all the time. Like, I love a knit, girl. I'll be in sweatpants almost every day, which is why the wrap pant was even invented. But I started exploring what those knit alternatives were, and I ran into bamboo. I found bamboo.
Mm.
And that just opened up so much for me because first and foremost, it felt incredible. It feels incredible. I'm wearing it as we speak. And so that was what originally drew me to the fabric. But then I began to understand how great a fabric it was and how sustainable it was and how it was naturally organic because, you know, it grows like a weed. It doesn't need fertilizers and pesticides and all this stuff. And it just opened up my eyes at a time where the world was also becoming more aware of how much impact we're having on the environment.
Yeah, absolutely. So for a lot of the listeners have read Memory Mansion, my memoir, self-love memoir, and in that I talk about how my spiritual awakening was kicked off when I wasn't able to launch my sustainable collection, and which has bamboo in it.
Mm.
The the closures, the pandemic, I think it was a time that where a lot of people really woke up to conscious living, to choosing, making wiser decisions, to sustainability. Was that when you began to expand your work and begin to open yourself up to the idea of teaching conscious living and working with people and retreats and things like that?
That happened. So we're talking, you know, the last quarter of 2020. That didn't happen honestly, um, and naturally for another year or two. I was immersed in trying to keep my brand alive,
Right.
and also exploring what I could do, you know, how I could do it sustainably and what more I could do, and just, you know, at that time I was in it. I was experiencing the conscious living and the awakening myself. So teaching it to others wasn't really on my mind. It was really just like being more aware of everything. And I think that's where, I mean, that's what conscious living is. It's like being really aware of your surroundings and your impact and your connectivity to others. So it didn't happen right away. I was just experiencing it and going through it and learning it and growing it. And I think honestly, the idea to share that and teach it really came as you and I began to work a little more together.
Yeah.
Probably in that was like 21, 22.
Hmm.
When was Memory Mansion launched?
Well, Memory Mansion is actually only a year old, but I think it's Unleash the
I'm
Empress.
sorry, Unleashed it. Yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes,
that's
yes.
two years ago.
Right, right. So there was a combination of things happening during that time, you know, personal and then things around me that just made me a bit more mindful of the choices. It was definitely led by the idea of sustainability. Like
Yeah,
that's what
yeah,
kicked it off because, you know, it was the awareness that we could all do a little something a little better. I think a lot of people did when you started seeing, you know, animals in places where they didn't go before and you realize like they're there because they're reclaiming this area that we're not polluting anymore. And it just was so impactful to me that I just wanted to continue that journey. And then as it sort of worked its way into my clothing and um into recognizing how important it was that the sustainable fabrics have a higher vibration than synthetic fabrics. And I guess
hmm
my discovery on how the fabrics really affect, you know, what touches our skin, our largest organ, has a real effect on us more than most people know. And I think that's what really sort of connected the two worlds for me
yeah,
because I realized now we're talking about vibration and frequencies, something that you don't think about so much with fashion. but it's so important. This is every single day we clothe ourselves. It's all drag, but we're putting these layers and cloaks on our body every day. How is this affecting us? How does it affect how we feel? How does it affect how we interact and connect to others?
Hmm.
That's the journey that I began to want to share a few years later. And it expanded from there to tapping into archetypes and styling wise how we really show our true selves. But it was really about mindful choices and what we can do individually.
Yeah, your external expression is a huge indicator of your internal chemistry, if you will, and it's a great way to bring the internal world that you have on to the surface, which I think is the thing you did so masterfully when you, as a stylist, compared to. I mean, I knew so many stylists back in the day, and you always stood out as someone who created a showcase for the natural person within to in a way that enhanced what they naturally were and helped them embody it even more. And that
Mm.
is such a gift. And you do that with your clothing design. You guys, if you've never checked out the Carlton Jones collection, it is ridiculously comfortable because that's like your number one rule. It's like if it's not comfortable, it is not
I
making it in
mean,
there.
it's this year for the very first time I did a corset, which is probably not the most comfortable thing, but it was just led by an artist that I was working with and something I was commissioned to do, and I was excited about. Okay, what does this feel like? The feeling of being snatched instead of just letting it all out, sort of
Yeah,
in
yeah, yeah.
juxtaposition. But in general, even that's like, is lined and it feels good on the body. And that's a different feeling too. Like some people are comfortable in that. Like some women are comfortable in heels. I don't get it. But you know what? It was just a way of pushing and expanding on me. But yeah, comfort first. Fashion should not hurt ever.
Right, right. So the industry's gone through massive change. The fashion industry, it's moved towards more sustainability. I'm really hoping that we're entering a time where people, conscious living is super important to both of us. It's important to the world. I think when I see people bragging about their Shein haul or their Temu haul, it breaks my heart because I don't think that younger generations, like they're so excited about having a ton of junk that they're not realizing what they're saying about their self-love and self-worth.
Mm.
Because I think when brands produce garbage for cents on the dollar and it can't make it through a couple of washings, I do think a lot of the younger generations don't really understand that what you choose to put on your body is an expression of how you care about yourself. Um,
100%.
yeah.
I think that's what's also changing now is that you realize that it's an extension and an expression, not just a picture. Like your choice is saying much more about, what your beliefs are.
You've always been a conscious living. I mean, although you may not have been an evangelist, I think back to when I first met you years ago on the beach in I think it was Jamaica at a fashion event.
Mm.
Even then, you were very physically fit. You teach capoeira. Am I saying that correctly?
Not quite, but cap. I know it's so tricky because the spelling is deceptive. The
Yeah,
Portuguese, capoeira.
capoeira.
Exactly. So I guess the phonetics would be Capweda, capoeira, even though it's spelled Capoeira, capoeira. But yes, I mean it's been another passion in my life, um, and an extension of expression that I didn't even know was in me. So that's been incredibly awakening in so many ways. I can't even. That's a podcast in itself.
I know, right?
It is.
But even 10, 15 years ago, I remember being in the kitchen with you and you were swishing coconut oil or something like that. You're like, "Oh, it's wonderful for your teeth." And I was
Oh
like,
yeah,
"Where do
pulling,
you?" I was like,
pulling.
"Where do you even get all this information?" She had this whole cabinet full of stuff, and and I knew quite a bit, but you were teaching me
Yeah.
back
Well,
then. So you've always been. This has always been something that felt natural to you.
yeah, because I think I've always been very aware of my health. I suppose. And something I don't think I've ever said on in this format is that that was probably led by being diagnosed with HIV in 1989.
Wow, Carlton, I'm
Yeah. So I had to pull it together to live.
and I living. You're making me cry. Um, so you've always you take care of your health for so many reasons because you care about health and well-being is a part of you naturally. You had a one of those shock moments in life when you were like,
Yeah.
"Thank you for sharing that with our audience." It takes so much self-love and so much boldness to be your authentic self. It really does. And it's that version of you that teaches people so much.
Thank you for the platform. This is not something that I necessarily hide, but I haven't had a reason. It hasn't been in context to broadcast it.
Yeah.
So that at the time, I was just, I moved to New York because I thought I have a, I have a short I have a short time on earth. If I can just live to be 30, what can I do within the next 10 years? Because I was, yeah, 20 years old.
Well, you know what's amazing is that I hear people who talk a lot. I deal with a lot of people who are trying to work their way through their unhappiness and find a way to be happy. And you're such a living example of getting poleaxed by the universe and still choosing to show up beautifully.
Now you're making me cry. Oh my God.
So all of this incredible journey that Carlton, I think there's a book. I think I'm going to be pushing you to do a book.
Hey, girl, you showed me that it can be done and it can be a bestseller. Congratulations also on your latest.
Oh, thank you. Thank
But
you.
yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Um, so you guys, you gave me an idea, by the way, talking about I'm not even going to try to pronounce it again.
Capoeira.
Capoeira.
Capoeira. Yes, yes. Eye
Um,
opener, game changer.
I'm thinking at our GTFU retreat in the spring,
Oh,
June 4th through the 8th, that we should do a sort of like
yes.
an exotic dance, an exotic ecstatic dance meets exercise kind of
Sure.
evening. Yeah.
With Fabulous doing so much, work, body work, and connecting us to our body, I mean, there's so many lessons I learned in capoeira, because it's the only martial arts where there's a rhythm and there's a constant movement. So it looks choreographed. The enslaved Africans had to disguise it to look like a dance. So that was the whole idea. They weren't allowed to gather unless they were singing and dancing. So nobody was going to let them be, practicing their fighting skills.
Yeah.
So they had to disguise it to look like a dance, which is why it has a rhythm and why it looks choreographed. But it's really the key to capoeira, and this is why it attracts so many women as much as men, that it's not about strength or power. It's about balance and timing. And because it's played in a circle and your target is constantly moving around you and you're constantly moving, and you have to connect with who you're playing. You have to keep eye contact to play the game efficiently, because that's how you understand what is going on. So the idea of constant moving, the idea of, a kick comes to your head, you learn how to not only duck from that kick, but how you transform that into something to your advantage. When you fall, you get up as quickly as you can, keeping the movement and keeping the rhythm. And those are parallels for life.
Oh, yeah.
You
Yeah.
fall, you get up and you keep it going. Like as quick, you don't sit there and go, "Oh my God, I fell down. I'm hurt," or you have to keep it going to the rhythm. And that, in addition to the energy in the capoeira roda, which is the circle we play in, is given from the people that are singing and clapping and playing the instruments. So that's the energy you put into the game. And that type of connected energy, even learning to my voice, like It's not about who's the best singer. It's like you sing because you know you're giving energy to that moment. And feeling that type of community I'd never had before. I'm not like that on this level. And I mean, I could go on and on. You see how excited I get about it, but all of that is a part of, I mean, that journey that just like made me so much more aware. It highlighted conscious living because it was about your surroundings and everything around you and yourself. So,
Yeah, I love how
yes, I
passionate you
like,
get.
yeah,
Yeah.
we should definitely have a basic class. We'll bring it to DR for our retreat. I love the
Yeah.
idea of that, and see
Yeah.
where, anyone could do it.
If you guys love this energy, and I want to get back to that for just a second, but I want to. Sorry, I'm all like I'm all runny now.
I'm sorry. At least your
No, no,
mascara is
no.
good.
I know. It's like, damn, it still looks pretty good. Uh, so, Carlton and I are talking about. So, for those of you who are followers or fans of either one of us, you know that Carlton and I, do retreats and events together, and amazing events and retreats where, I mean, the healing and the exploration of self and the glow up of everyone is it's so powerful to experience and to just be witness to people aligning in mind, body, and soul harmony, and loving themselves and building a new program for themselves, and designing new dreams for themselves. Like, it's such an incredible experience. We have our Dominican Republic retreat in June 4th through the
June
8th.
4th through the 8th, yes.
Yeah, we're going to DR and we're going to have an amazing time. You're going to have lots of wonderful workshops. So if you like this energy and you like people who are really authentic and real and are truly committed to the evolution, to enlightening the lifetime journey that is enlightening, then please join us. You can go to glowtheup.us
Yes.
and get some information there to come join us. To go back to what you were talking about with the practice of capoeira, I'm gonna
Getting
butcher
close.
it.
You're
It's
getting
close. It's
closer,
close.
closer, closer.
You were talking about continuing to keep moving, and I think there's something really interesting that goes on. So, uh, I think there's a fine line between stopping and healing because you've had an accumulation of stuff and wallowing in the memory
Mhm.
of the bad experiences. And I think we have to be so careful. This is why memory, it's one of the reasons I named my second book Memory Mansion, because our memories can keep us trapped, and evolving past our memory of something and transmuting our experiences is the process of continuing to move forward. And it's like, stop and pause and heal and see things for what they are and understand your part in it and
Mm.
forgive other people, because that's really about you moving forward in your own life and then continuing to move forward in life. And I think sometimes this is one of the reasons I'm not a huge fan of pharmaceuticals, because I think oftentimes the pharmaceuticals freeze people in their pain for a really long time and keep
Oh
them.
man, that's how they thrive.
Yeah, and yeah, exactly. And that keeps them lost for a really long time. So that's one of the reasons why healing our history is so important when we're trying to evolve, because it's difficult to do if you're hanging on to your junk. But I love
Right.
that about the practice is that it's teaching you to keep the momentum and keep moving forward, make the adjustments needed to be made.
In the process, which
Yeah.
balance plays the key to all of this. Like, and that's really in that realm. That's why you can duck at any moment. That's why you can move out of the way of the obstacles. If you have the balance and you're not out of balance, then you can adjust. That agility, I suppose, which is what we deal with in life every day. You're much more agile when you have balance.
Yeah, you really are. So, as a conscious living practitioner and
Hmm.
teacher, what are some of share with our audience? Because the show is the show's about people's journeys. It's about sharing the healing process, what people do to keep moving forward. What are some of the things that are just musts in your schedule that keep you so positive and
Hmm.
so energetic and so and an asset to the world?
Wow. Um, the biggest must is meditation. Um, on however that looks to you, however shape and form that is. And a lot of people like, I can't do it. I think too much. And, there's this and that, and there's so many excuses why it can be challenging, which I agree. And sometimes, but for me, again, I think that we need, just like we wash our bodies daily, we have to wash our energy on a daily. And for me, if I really make a conscious attempt to start my day with mindful gratitude of waking up first and foremost, hopefully thank you is the first words that come out of my mouth. If that's your small prayer for and gratitude for waking up and you move from there, then fine. But I've tried to make it a point before I start scrolling for emails and Instagram and Facebook and all of this to have a moment to myself to go ahead and start that frequency of just feeling my body, knowing where I am, deep breathing and meditation. They're usually guided because it's helpful for me to find journeys for my meditation to go on. But if not, even if it's just 5 minutes of conscious breathing where I'm just, awakening my body with cleansing breaths and exhaling the night sleep, exhaling anything I want to release and lose. Those to me are like mini vacations that I can take every single morning. And we're so worth that and so much more that I for me, if I can't do it first thing, then my mind begins to run too much with all the crap I have to do.
Yes.
So it's all about ritual. If you can create a ritual of taking 2, 5, 10, 20 minutes every morning, then it just becomes your thing and it becomes natural. And yes, your mind will wander and you'll go all these other places, but you owe it to yourself. I owe it to myself. And so that's the single most important thing that I do, hopefully every day at some shape or form, for sure, hands down.
Yeah, love all of those are wonderful tips. If people want to check out your collection, learn more about you, where would you want them to go?
You can go to my collection is at carltonjonescollection.com, and that shares pretty much a lot of what's going on with my brand. You can also see more of my styling work at carltonjonesnyc.com. Um, Not super updated, but it's got a lot of I kind of shied away from a lot of the celebrities on my website, and it's really more kind of fashion based, and those are, that's what's paying the bills, girl. So
Yeah.
that's still there. And honestly, ever since I started my brand, I haven't pursued styling. Fortunately, I have, work that's just, over the years, people who come back and love what I do, and word of mouth. So I haven't nurtured that side as much as like my brand side. I have to keep up to date. And all those are also on Instagram. Carlton Jones Collection is also on Instagram. But yeah, that's where you can find me. Otherwise, come and see me in New York City. I'm on 38th Street in the Garment District.
Yes, you are.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Carlton, for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. Carlton Jones Collection, you guys go check it out. It's gorgeous. Thank you so much to everyone who's a fan and supporter of the show. We have 5,000 listeners now on
Wow.
Spotify. We are hitting 80,000 downloads, which is incredible. And I'm super honored by that. Sorry. If you want to learn more about my work, if this is your first time catching the show, go to shamanisis.com and you can learn about my work and upcoming events. My books are all there. I've just redone the page, so it looks really good.
Wow, that looks fabulous. I love it.
Thank you. That's what,
So good.
I put together my spiritual books into a collection with my audiobook and some meditations and my course. And so my books all have a similar look now. Thank you so much, you guys, for making Memory Mansion number one again. And in fashion, number one in fashion, number one in fashion and art.
Ooh.
I couldn't even crack
Ooh.
the top 10,000 for like a year, and that was on the year anniversary of Memory Mansion.
Wow.
And because of your support, you've made Unleash the Empress, which was not what I would call a raging hit when it came out. After 2 years, it hit number 10 in women's health. Yes, and so thank you for that. And of course, there's if you like AI, I have a new American Dream. Um,
Mm.
You guys, if you like events, come and hang out with me. I will be in, I'm looking at my calendar really quick. I
Hmm.
am giving a speech at the Wellbeing at Work Summit in Austin on March 6th. I'm giving a speech at the New Life Expo in Deerfield Beach on 3/22 and 3/23. And then I'm in New York for the New Life Expo on 3/29 and 3:30. And if you miss all of those, I will be in Chicago at the Wellbeing at Work Summit, giving a talk on wellness in the workplace.
She's a
Uh,
busy girl. Yes.
that only took 3 years of really hard work.
Yeah, yeah, probably even more. But
Right.
congratulations, Cynthia.
Thank you. Thank
Congratulations.
you. It's exciting. So come and hang out with me, and you can always check out my website, shamanisis.com, to see what events I've got going on. Thanks, you guys. If you're not already subscribed, what are you thinking? Get on it. Spiritual and intellectual and inspiring content for you. We become the content that we consume. Anyway, thanks again,
Mm,
Carlton. I wish you an amazing week. And thanks
thank
again.
you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks again to our listeners. You guys have an amazing week too. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
If you're ready for transformation, check out Glow Up with Shaman Isis, the collection of books and courses.